In this lecture, I bring together the key concepts from Chapter 6 and connect them directly to sports nutrition practice. In this module, we covered lipids, one of the three macronutrients and arguably the most misunderstood one in sports nutrition. You have read the chapter and watched the resources, so in this lecture, I want to synthesize the key concepts and connect them directly to sports nutrition practice. Three questions will help guide us today. First off, what does fat do in the body and why does every athlete need it? Secondly, how does the body use fat during exercise? And lastly, what are the practical implications for performance, recovery, and long-term health? Let's get started. I want to open by addressing a narrative you have almost certainly encountered. That dietary fat is something athletes should minimize in the interest of body composition and performance. This idea largely emerged from 1970s and 80s research linking dietary fat to cardiovascular disease. While that research had merit in a clinical context, the popular interpretation was far too broad. Fitness culture adopted the low-fat message wholesale, and the result was a generation of athletes who unnecessarily restricted fat, often replacing it with processed carbohydrates. The science has since corrected this. Fat is an essential macronutrient. It fuels endurance exercise, forms the structural backbone of every cell membrane in the body, serves as the precursor for steroid hormone synthesis, and is required for absorption of fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. The foundation of today's lecture starts here. Fat restriction beyond a certain threshold is not a performance advantage. It can actually be a physiological liability. And believe it or not, right now your body is running on fat most likely. Let me establish a concept that is central to fat metabolism in athletes. This is the relationship between exercise intensity and fuel substrate utilization. At rest, fat contributes approximately 85% of the body's energy. During low intensity activity, fat remains dominant at around 65%. At moderate intensity, the ratio shifts to roughly 50-50 between fat and carbohydrate. And at high intensity, sprints, heavy lifting, explosive movements, carbohydrates become the dominant substrate at approximately 80%. The reason for this shift is ATP production rate. Fat oxidation is an aerobic process that requires oxygen and takes time. At higher intensities, the demand for rapid ATP production favors carbohydrate, which can be metabolized anaerobically through glycolysis. The sports nutrition implication is significant here. Aerobically trained athletes become more efficient fat oxidizers, a physiological adaptation that spares muscle glycogen for high intensity efforts. This is why aerobic based training is metabolic conditioning, not just cardiovascular conditioning. As practitioners, understanding this crossover concept is essential for designing effective fueling strategies across different sports and training phases as well. Dietary fats are classified by the degree of saturation of their fatty acid chains. Let me briefly review each type from a sports nutrition perspective. So monounsaturated fats found in olive oil, avocados, almonds, cashews have a strong evidence base for cardiovascular health and inflammation reduction. These should form the foundation of an athlete's daily fat intake. Next up are polyunsaturated fats, particularly omega-3 fatty acids. These have significant implications for athletic recovery, which we will address on the next slide. Saturated fats found in butter, red meat, and full-fat dairy are required in small amounts for steroid hormone synthesis, but become problematic in excess. They can elevate LDL cholesterol, and the American Heart Association actually recommends limiting saturated fat to 5 to 6% of total caloric intake. That's moderate. not zero. So consumption is the appropriate guidance for most athletes. Trans fats, the recommendation here is unambiguous, let's say. Artificial trans fats raise LDL, they lower HDL, and they promote systemic inflammation. So the advice to athletes is to avoid any product listing partially hydrogenated oils on their ingredients list. And here are some foods that may have those: fried fast food, packaged pastries, margarine, and then maybe look out for them in other snacks. Omega-3 fatty acids warrant specific attention because the evidence for their role in athletic health and recovery is substantial and continuing to grow. There are three primary omega-3s. ALA is found in plant sources: flaxseed, chia seeds, walnuts. EPA and DHA are found primarily in fatty fish. And the conversion of ALA to EPA and DHA in the body is highly inefficient, though. It's typically less than 10%, which has direct implications for plant-based athletes. The 5 benefits on this slide are all well supported by current research: reduced exercise-induced muscle damage and soreness, reduced post-training inflammation through EPA's effect on pro-inflammatory eicosanoids, DHA's structural role in neuronal membranes, relevant to cognitive function and concussion recovery. As Dr. Frakes discussed earlier in the module, reduced joint pain and stiffness for high volume athletes, and improved cardiovascular efficiency in endurance populations. And then regarding the dosage, the general population recommendation is approximately 0.5 grams of EPA plus DHA daily. But for athletes, the research supports 1 to 3 grams per day, given greater inflammatory demands. So for plant-based athletes, algae-based omega-3 supplements are the recommended alternative. And algae is the original marine source of EPA and DHA. So research consistently shows athletes are not meeting omega-3 recommendations. So this is a really practical intervention point worth addressing in any sports nutrition type of assessment. So let me translate these recommendations into practical dietary guidance organized here into 3 categories. So our omega-3 rich sources. 3 ounces of cooked salmon provides approximately 1.8 grams of EPA and DHA, approaching the lower athletic target in a single serving. Also, sardines and mackerel are equally effective and often more cost accessible. And then for plant-based sources, walnuts and chia seeds provide meaningful ALA intake. Monounsaturated sources, half a medium avocado, 1 tablespoon of olive oil, 1 ounce of almonds. Practical daily portions that also provide potassium, vitamin E, and magnesium as well. And then some athlete-friendly meal combinations. Here you can see a salmon and avocado bowl, oatmeal with nut butter before training, Greek yogurt with walnuts as a recovery snack, chia pudding prepared the night before. These combinations integrate fat alongside carbohydrate and protein in a way that supports overall dietary balance. So the overarching principle is food first. Whole food sources of fat provide a nutrient matrix that isolated supplements just cannot replicate. But supplementation is appropriate when dietary intake is inefficient, but it should complement, not replace, dietary quality. So the American Dietetic Association recommends that fat constitute 20 to 35% of total daily caloric intake. Placement within that range depends on training volume, sports demands, and body composition goals. To put practical numbers on this, a 2,500 calorie diet for an athlete needs approximately 55 to 97 grams of fat daily, versus a 3,500 calorie diet is 78 to 136 grams, and then up to 4,500 calories, which is not uncommon for high volume endurance or team sport athletes. The range extends to 100 to 175 grams per day. So things I want to emphasize are that the 20% lower threshold is physiologically significant. Below this level, you risk impaired hormone synthesis, fat-soluble vitamin deficiency, and inadequate essential fatty acid intake, which can all cause decreased recovery, hormonal disruption, and immune suppression. So fat phobia, as mentioned before, in athletic populations is, documented and clinically relevant. So especially in athletes that are in aesthetic or weight class type of sports are particularly vulnerable. So dietary fat quality matters as much as quantity, and 30% of calories from predominantly saturated and trans fat is fundamentally very different than 30% coming from those other sources of monounsaturated and omega 3 fat sources. Now, a lot of athletes want to know about timing and the timing of fat intake. And here you'll see a meal containing moderate fat 2 to 3 hours before exercise is well tolerated, usually. The key contraindication is high fat intake within 60 to 90 minutes of exercise. It can slow gastric emptying, delay carbohydrate availability, and increase possibility of GI stress as well. So this is particularly in endurance athletes. And then during exercise, fat is not a practical mid-workout type of a fuel because the rate of fat oxidation cannot meet the ATP demands at moderate to high intensity. So during sessions exceeding 60 minutes, the focus shifts during exercise primarily and almost solely to carbohydrate. As far as post-training goes, the recovery priority is always carbohydrate and protein. Fat does not impair recovery when consumed in moderate amounts. So like if there was a meal with salmon, rice, and vegetables, that would be fantastic. But we want to make sure, that carbohydrate and protein are focused on, with some moderate fat is okay. And then on rest days is when fat intake can help athletes meet their caloric needs. The body still requires fat for hormone production, cell membrane maintenance, all those really important functions. So on rest days, it's a good idea to prioritize omega-3 rich meals and establish these consistent dietary patterns, which will make the biggest difference over time. So let's look at these quick 5 mistakes that can be made. First one, chronic fat restriction. It causes hormone disruption, reduces fat-soluble vitamin absorption, and increases risk for REDS risk in female athletes. So mistake 2 is high-fat pre-exercise meals, which can slow gastric emptying, causing nausea, bloating, GI stress. So you'd certainly want to go with a pre-workout meal that you're very familiar with and kind of maybe experiment with the quantity of fat. Ignoring omega-3 fatty acids is, would be one other mistake and something to look for. And then substituting supplements for dietary quality, always focus on diet first and use supplements to kind of help boost or supplement if these foods cannot be consumed or are not available. Mistake number 5 is treating all fat as equivalent. So as shown in this presentation, they're not equivalent. We really want to be mindful of the different sources, and that dietary fat quality must be a part of the conversation when talking to athletes. So then, our key takeaways here, dietary fat is essential. Every athlete requires it. Fat is the primary fuel source at rest and during low to moderate intensity exercise. Fat quality matters. Prioritize monounsaturated fats and omega-3s. Target 20 to 35% of calories from fat. Do not fall below 20%. Timing matters. Avoid high-fat meals within 90 minutes of training. Post-exercise recovery, prioritize carbohydrate and protein. And then lastly, omega-3 fatty acids are underconsumed. This has been a big focus in this module. So looking into how to get that is very important. All right, and that concludes our lecture for this module. And I hope you enjoyed it.